And good evening. It's a Sunday evening and we're on the Manx Labour Party Facebook page and we're welcoming our candidate from Garth, which is out east. It's Gareth Young. Good evening, sir.
Evening, Jeff. How are we doing today?
Well, it's been another fine day. I think everyone's been out exercising. No doubt the glens and the parks have been busy out where you are.
Yeah, well, it's been a lovely day. Unfortunately, myself and my family, we're in isolation at the moment. So we managed to get out in the garden for a while. Kids are bouncing on the trampoline. Me and my wife were doing a bit of gardening, and I spent a bit of the afternoon doing some reading, which was always quite nice to be able to do.
Because, of course, you're planning on venturing into the House of Keys, which is the election is in September 21, and what an interesting time to be focusing on this pathway. I mean, we've got a government that's under pressure, that's on the back foot. They talked about Howard o'clock last year. Is Howard o'clock approaching the witching hour? Who knows? There could be a backbench rebellion this week. I think there's quite a bit of dissenting voices, isn't there? Social media. It looks like they're breaking ranks, but we're not really here to talk about that now. But you must be thinking it's a real exciting time to be getting involved.
It genuinely is. I initially thought about it for the last set of elections, but family-wise, we weren't in a position to be able for me to just venture out and do something like this. And this time round, we were looking at it, and I was saying to my wife, Steph, and we were talking about how much I would like to try and do something like this. And it's a very, very exciting time to try and get involved and try and make a bit of a difference to the way things are done.
Well, tell me, you've got a varied career background. I think it's public and private sector, which must be an advantage. Just tell us, very briefly where you are, what you've done.
Okay, so I wasn't born on the Isle of Man. I grew up in the UK. I came here about 14 years ago after spending some of my time working for the National Health Service in the UK. Part of the military reserve while I was doing that, while I was at university as well. I came here as a teacher and spent the past 14 years teaching on the Isle of Man. Predominantly science. I'm a physics teacher is my specialism. And so I've done pretty much my entire career in public service. And what a better way to try and keep that going with serving as a local representative for the people.
Well, a physics teacher, so you'll have a good understanding of how to attract the momentum, hopefully. So we'll just go back. I mean, you're a school teacher and you're in isolation. Now, don't get me wrong, this is featured in the news over the weekend. What's your take on it?
Obviously, it's a really quite unfortunate circumstance, more than anything. Personal opinion was that we did lock down a little bit too late, and hindsight is a wonderful thing because you look at things with 20/20 vision. We were all looking at it last weekend going, if we've got a case in the school, surely we should lock down. And we went back, and then on the Tuesday morning I arrived into work. I was met by my head teacher and told that unfortunately I'd been in the classroom with students who'd been tested positive. So headed home, my wife came home, my kids came home from school, and we've been dealt with really well by the 111 team, and I've been for my test and I'm lucky I've come back negative. And so hopefully just another week or so and we'll be able to get back out into the world and start exercising again in some of the lovely places that we have on the Isle of Man.
Well, it looks like we've got a few gremlins with our sound. We've got quite an audience out there at the moment. Just put in the comments box the quality of the sound if you can. We've got James Corrin who said there's a bit of an issue, so we'll just have to scratch our heads. I can hear you and you can hear me, so it's always difficult to identify where the fault might be. So if you're happy with the sound, just give us a thumbs up or just say hi in the box if you can. But we'll proceed anyway, because this interview will be recorded and it'll be posted on YouTube later. So please, if you have any opinions or anything that you want to ask us, just post a question in the place where you know where to go. So we'll continue anyway. Now then, let me see. You're a Manx Labour Party candidate.
Yep.
Just talk me through that. Talk me about your membership and your affinity with the party.
I'm a relative newcomer to the Labour Party on the Isle of Man. When I was starting to think about running for election, I started obviously having a look at the different parties that were out there and the way that the proper makeup of the MHKs and how that comes about. And a lot of them are independents and they've got their own thoughts on things. But growing up in the UK, I was always a Labour Party supporter. My viewpoints and the way that I think things should be done always very nicely aligned with the way the Labour parties wanted to run things in the UK, which was always a good thing to be able to do. And then on the Isle of Man, when I realised that the Labour Party was there, and I happened to work with the chair of the Labour Party a few years ago when I was at Ballacameen, I decided to reach out and get in touch, and coming to the meetings, talking to Sarah Maltby, I realised that the way I think things should be done lined up really well with the Labour Party, and so joined, and here I am as a Manx Labour Party candidate.
And of course, the social aspect of Isle of Man society is well and truly tested at the moment. We've certainly got what you'd call a housing crisis. We've got issues with the health service. We've got increased cost of living and those at the lower end who are struggling to get by. So, any of those issues that really catch your eye?
One of the big ones for me is just the lack of affordability of housing on the island. If you're a young person, you've been through school, you've done college, you've headed to university, you come back from university, your median starting salary is somewhere in the region of £20,000, and that puts you at looking to try and purchase a house that's in the region of about £270,000 on average, which just puts it massively out of reach. And I think from that side of things, the housing that we have on the Isle of Man is just putting off our next generation of people from being able to stay on the island with ease. I know me and my wife moved house a year ago, and when we were looking at purchasing our house, the mortgage that we've got was equivalent to the rental that we were paying on our property that we were living in after selling our last house. And when we actually went through the process with the banks, all but one of the banks said that we weren't able to afford a mortgage, even though the mortgage that we would be paying was the same amount of money as the rent that we were paying, which wasn't an issue based on our salaries. So for that, I really do think that we need to have a proper plan going forward where we build affordable housing that is then made available for people who are on those lower income brackets, that allows them to get on the property ladder, that allows them to actually move forwards.
And this is a problem which has been growing for many years. I think we've had rampant sort of building of housing estates. Green belts have been broken, really, and a lot of these housing, I think the housing strategy in 2016 was advising that 25% of all new builds should be affordable, and that's certainly not been the case.
Definitely. It really looks at what the definition of affordable actually is. When you look at a lot of the new build properties, and 25% of them is supposed to be affordable housing, they're still in the region of £250,000 to £350,000, and in realistic terms, that is not affordable for people. There's very few people that can just walk out there and be able to purchase a £300,000 house. Uh, and I think we need to shift our definition of it and definitely hold the companies and the planning to account on these kinds of things.
And of course, it is having extra social housing created and built, and there must be a lot of opportunities for that across the island. So tell me, we'll move a little bit more onto a local front. What issues face you in your local neighbourhood, or in Garth? Well, tell us first of all, where is Garth? What are the boundaries?
Well, Garth is quite a substantial area in terms of the island. It's one of the largest in terms of land area. And it stretches from the border with Ramsey right down through Mackald, into Doon, Glenmona, through Laxey, into Lonnan, Baldrine, and even through part of Onken as well. So we take into account the Groudle area of Onken and some of the Lakeside Garden housing as well. So it's an area, it's somewhere in the region of 10,000 people. So it's just over 10% of the population of the island. So it's quite a substantial constituency that requires obviously somebody who's got the kind of vision and guile to see projects through and to make sure that the people have kind of the best opportunity possible for it.
And of course, you've got a variety of residents, haven't you? You've got those involved in agriculture, tourism, and your residential overflow from the Douglas kind of workforce, if you like.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very, very diverse area. You have extremely lovely, like rural greenbelt areas. You've got those kind of fabulous farmlands that are utilised quite substantially. We've got huge amounts of like local small businesses, that are a proper backbone of the Manx economy, need to be fostered. Then we've got those like working populations that make the routes into Douglas or into the industrial areas around Douglas on a daily basis. So we do have quite a substantial amount of stuff, and we've obviously looking at those things, it does come with its problems as well. One of the severest problems that has been around recently is the flooding of Laxey, and the kind of substantial impact that that's had over the past kind of 10 years or so, where those floods have happened on a relatively or worryingly regular basis. And those kinds of things need to be addressed much more quickly than they have been in the past.
Indeed, I mean, I'd imagine that the suggestion is from the locals is that they're unhappy about the maintenance and care of the river that obviously allowed this to happen. I'm not quite in tune with the report, or I think there's a report due, isn't there? But I'm sure it's a big responsibility that Laxey's needs have got to be sorted on that front.
Definitely. The report's been published relatively recently, and they came out with a series of recommendations. And the biggest recommendation, the first one that came upon, was about the better priority given to preparing to deal with flood risks and flood resilience. And that's not just for Laxey, but the Isle of Man in general. The fact that we've had flooding issues, we've got coastal overtopping issues on a regular basis, and it is just down, and there's a substantial chunk of it that is down to lack of maintenance on our infrastructure. When we look down at the beach at Laxey, a lot of the coastal overtopping that happens, there's massive amounts of erosion at the bottom of the wall, which is why there's so many stones on the beach, and there's a lack of maintenance that's going on there. And instead of sorting out that maintenance, we seem to be getting down the route of piling on large infrastructure projects to try and fix it, rather than maintaining what we already have. And the kind of the governance of those flood risks realistically needs to be renewed quite quickly, and proper measures put in place to ensure that these things don't happen again.
And beyond Laxey, our approach to green policy and climate change, I would say on an Isle of Man from 2-3 out of 10. What do you think?
I probably agree with you. We look at our green policies, and they're a very light touch set of policies. Our largest power producing areas are still just fossil fuel driven, and there's no real impetus in any way, shape or form we've got a huge amount of potential to be able to drive everything via wind and wave on the Isle of Man and be 100% renewable very, very easily if we actually put proper plans in place and look at it with proper financial responsibility. And I think if that happens and we change the way that we are with things, we reduce our emissions, then we could be a proper world leader in how to operate on a completely renewables basis. So.
It does seem to me that it's almost like we've got a green policy set by a presenter from Top Gear or the like. It's we seem to be a little bit rash. There doesn't seem to be a care given, whereas on an island we've got 85,000 people to look after. What sort of issues do you think we should? Do you think we should look more at giving grants for solar energy and alternative sources?
Yeah. In reality, I think if we moved very easily to being able to give grants to people that would insulate their homes better, ensure you had a reduction in heat loss, the move to things like the air source heat pumps for people's properties, so you move them onto electric rather than burning gas or oil directly in the home, they're far more efficient than gas or oil boilers. Then looking at the power generation on a small scale, if you had grant systems that move people to be able to have solar panels installed on the houses, and then that just paid back into the grid during the day with the excess electricity, they could be very easily pulled out at night without any issues there. You've then got the installation of an offshore wind turbine or a series of offshore wind turbines that we could put in place and generate the electricity. There's numerous things that we could actually do if we put those plans and policies in place to actually do it. And at the moment, it doesn't seem to be getting anywhere because, there doesn't seem to be the want in government at the moment to actually do that.
Yeah, it's a bit of can kicking. I think we can see that. And I think it's burst out in the news today that the locals are going to get hit hard with the road tax. There's a petition form. There's over 1,500 signatures on that already. Where does transport sit with you? Because there's a focus on, should we have free public transport? Should we have electric vehicles for all? Because at the moment, to buy an electric vehicle, you've got to have a few quid in the bank. There doesn't seem to be a great deal of incentive for that.
No, it's as with any emerging technology, they are generally more expensive when they initially hit the market, and electric vehicles are more expensive than a standard combustion engine vehicle. And I think we need to maybe look at things like energy cooperatives or electric vehicle fleet cooperatives and things like that in order to actually get those off the ground properly, where people can invest into them in order to generate an income, people can use them. I think public transport needs to be expanded quite substantially. The free public transport idea, I do like the sound of free public transport, but I know for the residents of Garth, it doesn't work 100% because you've got somewhere like the area of Mackle, which is really poorly serviced by public transport, where they're not able to use that and they're not able to utilise it. So if you wanted to put something like that in place, all those kind of thoughts about those smaller local areas need to be put in place as well, because we can't just look at bringing everybody into Douglas. Is there going to be a loop service that comes out of Ramsey and through Mackle and then takes residents into Ramsey on a regular basis, those kinds of bits and pieces? And I think if we do something like that, it needs to be thought through with the whole island perspective on how it works. Also, we need to look at buses that are more environmentally friendly. I know that this year we bought 6 of the hybrid buses, and I think that fleet would need to be expanded, so it's a large capital investment at that point. And then obviously with all of those plans, we've got to ensure that we're able to generate the revenue in order to do that. And it's no small undertaking. But I think if we actually plan for it correctly, if we follow through with those plans, and if you've got the right people in the right places, then you're able to do that.
So on a similar note, I know the likes of the Heritage Railway, the electric railway is a big talking point. and it's right on your doorstep, and you may have certain views about it, but you've got this gigantic hydroelectric power opportunity up the valley, and it's not moving. What's your view on that?
It's quite funny because you hear that kind of prospect of it quite often. Why is the Laxey wheel not generating hydropower and things like that? It actually comes down to just simple mechanics on the wheel. The wheels aren't designed to be able to rotate in such a way that you could actually generate hydroelectric power from it. The gearing systems that you'd be able to put in place on them would put too much stress on the wheel and it'd actually break it. So as much as we have that opportunity to put something like that in place, it wouldn't be in keeping with how the wheel would actually continue to work afterwards. And I know at the moment the wheel's broken and it doesn't turn. And that's another thing of an investment from Manx Natural Heritage, and that needs to be addressed, and bringing those visitor numbers in. Like, people want to come and see the Laxey wheel, they want to see it turning, they want to be able to see it in all its glory, should we say.
Well, how important is the visitor economy going to be for Laxey in the future?
It's essential for Laxey. We've got huge numbers of local businesses that are like well serviced by the local residents of Laxey. However, when we then look at how those businesses interact with the tourism population, they really do kind of survive by having those increases of numbers of like during the warmer months. When you've got really like brilliant businesses like the corn mill just around the corner from the wheel, you've got the shed and the Laxey Beach cafe and shops right down by the beach that are just magnets for people to go to. And I think tourism and the uptake of tourism is really important for these kinds of areas.
Absolutely, and for the future, we've got to look at these income streams for business and revenue on the island. Now, just for the listeners, now I've changed my microphone over, so if anyone could just give us a thumbs up, because I was muting it each time you were answering your questions before. So we had Alice saying, when you're speaking, Jed, it was getting a crackle. So if the crackle has stopped, please just add a comment in the box. But in addition to that, if you've got any questions for Gareth, please fire away. I'm sure he'll be quite open to be tested, as it were, online on a Sunday evening. So we'll just move on to a couple of more topics, and I'm just picking out from your... Barry Murphy says it's all good now, so that's good. So we can chat away. So let's talk about mental health on the Isle of Man. It's hit the headlines. It's a concern for everyone, and it's something that there's got to be investment in this sector.
Definitely. It's always one of those things where people struggle to kind of get to grips with why mental health is so important initially. I kind of grew up in Manchester through the 80s and 90s, and every time that times got tough, a lot of people just used to look at you and just to tell you to man up or sort yourself out and you'll be fine, and those kinds of things. And I know from my current job and dealing with students on a regular basis, the mental health side of things is just as important as physical health. And I know that our mental health services struggle on a daily basis. When you look at CAMS or the outreach work that's done, there is just not the funding or the number of staff that's actually required to run these services properly. And we need to invest in them properly if we want to truly make a difference. And we can't just keep trudging our way through, hoping that the small numbers of people that we have in there working miracles at the moment are just going to keep doing it. But
you know what the worry is now. We're under extremely testing times, and the pressures on mental health are right across the spectrum. We've got we've got the elderly end of the spectrum where, we've got people who haven't been able to see their families. A lot of people in the older generation, their families live away. They're not able to visit them. They've been in solitude. They've had the fear of the virus, and it's never escaping, the media. But let's just claw back. We've got livelihoods that are in danger. We've got jobs that are in jeopardy. We've got an uncertain sort of future for the Isle of Man, and then right down into your school. What about these 16-year-olds, these 15-year-olds, the 17, 18-year-olds, who they don't even know whether they're going to be taking an exam in 6 weeks' time, and surely this decision could have been made by now.
You would have thought that would be the case. We are in a really unfortunate position in the school at the moment that the exam board that we do is an international exam board, and there has been very, very little guidance that's actually been issued from the exam board. They are still running their exams in different countries in the world, and they've basically just gone down that route of holding off on any major decisions for as long as possible, and that causes huge amounts of mental anguish for the students taking it, for the staff trying to keep the students motivated and keep them going through. And it's a really unfortunate position because we just don't know yet. It needs somebody to actually make that decision. Either it's the exam board that's going to say, nope, we're going to go to teacher assessed grades, or it's the government that just says, nope, we are moving away from this exam board. You're going to do teacher assessed grades, and we're going to go in line with what the UK is doing with regards to those things. And I think it just needs somebody to actually make that decision and not sit on the fence continuously.
Well, I think we all know the answer. There's no way that the kids could take their exams now. It just wouldn't be fair. It'd be straight to appeal.
Yeah,
that needs to be quantified. But what we do need is we need to prepare for what the outcomes are now, because we've almost got a lost generation.
Yeah, very much so. We are at that stage where we've got people last year, this year, if they've not sat exams, they've got very little hard evidence for exactly where they sit, apart from those teacher assessed grades. And don't get me wrong, the amount of work that goes into those teacher assessed grades is enormous. They're based on every single piece of data that the teachers can get their hands on. They're based on mock exams, internal exams, independent pieces of work, coursework, loads of different things. So they are relatively accurate pieces of information, but the students will be full of worry and doubt as to where they go next. And I think from a government's perspective, we need to be looking at making sure that these students and these young people of ours have a definite future with job prospects, with further training, looking at all those different aspects and making sure that we can provide for them in the future.
Well, the worry is that there's going to be a millstone around this. I won't say at this generation, this age group, that they're going to be the COVID students. That in years to come, it could actually affect their job prospects, let alone the damage that it's given to them and their confidence. They're going to be treated differently because they won't have gone through the exam ritual. I really think that this needs to be jumped on now.
It does. They need to be looking at developing internships and apprenticeships in different areas so that the students can invest into those. We've got to look at exploration of emerging technology sectors so that we can train people for those areas. And we've got to really got to work on ensuring that things like that are in place now or as soon as possible for those students so that they've got somewhere they can move forward, because it'll be better for them in the long run.
Well, at the moment, I think that there's a pathway that young people have travelled on, and it kind of splits at certain ages. It goes into employment at 15, 16. It goes up to A levels. It goes up to university. It goes up to leaving the island. But on the Isle of Man, I'm not seeing a home where there's learning to furnish new industry, new businesses. I know it goes on, but I kind of think we could do so much better and hang on to our young people who just seem to migrate to, better lives in the UK and beyond.
It does. It comes down to prospects and knowing what's out there. I mean, every year on the island we have like expos that go on about the different like technology sectors and the different jobs that are available on the Isle of Man. And there is a lot of niche markets that are out there for people, but they are not particularly well advertised. And a lot of people don't know that a lot of those sectors exist for them. And I think we need to work on how we get that information to students and how we encourage them to stay on the island and show them that there is decent job prospects, that there is really, really good scope for progression on the island, and support them in doing so. To encourage those students to come back to the island and to stay with us. I know, looking at these kinds of things, my nephew, for example, he's moved to London for job prospects and a better set of prospects because the Isle of Man wasn't giving him what he needed. And I know my niece, his sister, on the other hand, has stayed on the island because the prospects for her side of the job is very, very good. So I think we just need to work on getting that information to people and showing them the fact that there is decent prospects here.
It's absolutely vital because, our average age is increasing, the birth rate is decreasing, and really young people have got to have hope. So they're going to stay on the island if there's good things to do, if there's entertainment, if there's affordable housing that is actually green tech and is saving the environment, and then finding jobs in growth areas that are valued and interesting. I mean, the online gaming sector has brought a lot of security and wealth to the island, but are we dancing with the devil? I don't know. I listen to Radio 4, and in the morning on the Today programme, they'll just sneak in a story about the dangers of gambling. It's something that's on the radar now, and we've had alcohol, smoking, drugs, and it's one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, isn't it?
It can be a little bit like that, yes. I personally, I don't gamble in any way, shape, or form. I've watched it. I've seen it destroy people's lives. Back in the UK, people that I know quite well who've just got themselves in a horrendous downward spiral with it. And I think if we're going to welcome technology like those sectors to the Isle of Man, then we need to make sure that they are properly regulated and that they don't take advantage of people, because invariably the lower earners of society are generally the people who tend to spend more time on those sites as well. And all of the advertising that you see for them is very aggressive advertising, that it's very that it makes it very fun, that it makes it enticing, and those kinds of bits and pieces, a little bit like cigarette advertising used to be. And all of those kinds of bits and pieces, we need to be very, very careful and regulate those kinds of things quite substantially if we're going to have those like business sectors on the island. Well, to make sure they act in a responsible manner more than anything.
I mean, there's no doubt about it. That sector has evolved and developed, and there's been a lot of pressure on being a little bit more responsible, and I think there is evidence to that. And if there was a way to make gambling a pursuit that isn't going to damage your welfare, life, well-being and family, then there might be a place for it. But I think we've got to be looking at ways to increase the number of jobs on the island. There's got to be new and exciting industries, but it's a real big challenge. Financial services, great as long as everything is above board, but really, I don't know. What is there? Some golden nuggets out there you can think of?
I think we need to probably look at kind of emerging technology sectors more than anything. When you look at the advent of kind of electric vehicles, the space sector, those kinds of bits and pieces, and the kind of technology that are going to need developing and building, is quite interesting and exciting. And I think investing into bringing those industries to the island would be quite useful. Whether we could manufacture solar panels, those kinds of bits and pieces at a competitive rate, whether or not we actually start building things for companies like SpaceX on a regular basis, and introduce those kind of technology sectors to the island in order to bring those prospects through. It's quite an interesting set of stuff that would need to be happening, and I think that would capture some of the attention of some of our younger people as well.
Absolutely, all day long. A Silicon Island, not a Silicon Valley. That would be, top of the list of wants. So I think we'll just come to an end, but we've done well with the viewers tonight, so thank you for checking us out. If you do have any comments or questions, please put them in the box. Even when the broadcast is finished, we can perhaps come back to those in time to come. So, Gareth, tell me, what's the plan? I mean, you're stuck indoors at the moment.
Unfortunately, yeah, very much stuck indoors at the moment. So I'm just dripping some bits and pieces out via Facebook at the moment. I've joined the 21st century, and I've got myself an Instagram account now, although I've not actually used it yet. And then I'm just going to be dripping bits and pieces out over the internet to people. If people want to get in touch with me, they can do it through my Facebook page or through my email address, and I'll endeavour to get back to them. And hopefully, when the lockdown ends, if people want to come and talk to me and those kinds of bits and pieces, I'll be holding a few evenings at the Institute in order to get to see people and give them the opportunity to meet me in person. So it'd be quite nice to be able to do.
Well, there you have it. Thank you, everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Gareth, and good luck with the campaign. And no doubt we'll chat again. So any comments, please put them in the box, share the page. And if you're interested in joining the Manx Labour Party, just send a message or go onto our web page, which is on this Facebook page. But we'll call it an evening. Thank you very much.
Much appreciated for your time, Jeff. Thank you.